This episode of Comic Confidential is brought to you by my new podcast, Believe, Australian Paranormal and UFO Radio. If you guys like listening to true spooky stories, I suggest that you head over to iTunes and check that out. It's Australia's only paranormal and UFO call-in podcast. So, you know what? It's a bit spooky. Welcome to Comic Confidential, a pop culture podcast. Today we are talking comic books that deserve TV shows. I'm your host, Cade, and joining me for the second time are two very handsome boys, two listener favorites, and that's Joel and Jackson from Sanspants Radio. Welcome, fellas.
Thanks a bunch.
Howdy, howdy.
So, you guys have just wrapped up a massive UK tour, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then you decided to follow that up with an East Coast tour of Australia.
Yes.
I don't really remember the moment where we decided we were doing the East Coast tour. We just came back and it was like, and we're leaving again. But it was far less intense, that one. That's just...
Yeah. That was very much planned to be like, let's just try and do something a little bit quick and kind of like one day after the other, like bang, 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 bang. Whereas the sort of the UK tour we did was somewhat sort of spaced out. Oh no, that wasn't that spaced out.
Really.
No, that was exhausting.
Yeah,
the Get Cooked tour was a bit more spaced out.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
that's true.
yeah, it's kind of this weird thing where you're like, well, it's a completely different thing. So even though you are traveling and that, it's like, no, we're doing something different. But yeah, I don't know, the inability to sit still.
Yeah.
I blame undiagnosed ADHD for both of us.
Probably.
Yeah.
That's great. So, is it a holiday at all, or is it just all pure work when you're doing that?
You'd think it was a little bit of a holiday, but it just ends up not being. You might get like a day if you're lucky.
Yeah, right.
Depends how we sort of plan it. This time around, we planned it like idiots for the UK tour, so it was just not really much of a break in between the shows.
Well, it's this kind of thing when we plan where we're like, oh, we'll do like day on, day on, day on, day on, day off, day on, day on. We're like, and that day off will completely 100% recharge us. But then the day off happens and we're all exhausted lying in bed and we're like, well, I didn't fix myself with that 1 day's break. All right, back to it.
Yeah. So,
and I'm sure the sickness like sets in pretty quickly over that.
Oh yeah, it's a matter of time until one of us gets a cold, and then
I ended up getting a 100-day cough. I think is what the kids are calling it. So I basically had a cough halfway through the tour that didn't let up until just before the East Coast of Australian tour. So that was a lot of fun.
I got a cold very early on, and then it left, and I was good for the rest of the trip, which was very lucky. So yeah, frustrating. Things you learn. Yeah.
That as you get older and you get post 30, Jack. The body can't cope with a lot of things.
Yeah.
One of them is staying awake.
I'm very much in that life myself. I just have a newborn girl, so thank you. So sleep is very much a it's a treat these days. So
yeah, you don't realize just how important it is. Like we just came back from the East Coast tour, and I spent the weekend sleeping. Like I spent Saturday night, I slept for 11 hours.
Oh wow,
it was incredible.
That's 3 nights worth for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, as I kept forgetting, it was a birthday treat for myself.
Yeah, that's true.
And just to throw a bit more craziness into the mix, you guys have started a new podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, we have.
Again, that undiagnosed ADHD.
It's kind of impossible for us to go more than a month without being like, what about this for a podcast? Let's start that. And then
I got this as an idea.
Getting it all underway.
So we're doing a video games review podcast, Thumb Cramps, and it's mostly focused on people who are a little bit time-starved or just not very good at video games, like ourselves.
And perfect for me by the sounds of that.
None of us are gamers. None of us have like a background in knowing stuff about video games. You know, I'm sure there are a lot of video game reviews out there that are telling you about specs and game feel or something. We don't know. I think what I like about
the
thumb
mouth
cramps,
feel of game.
Yeah.
I just put it in my mouth or switch it around a bit.
Crunchy.
Yeah, it turns out
Tastes like
Switch
CD.
games. Bleh.
But I think what makes thumb cramps unique, well, not unique, but just good, is that we're very upfront about what we're looking for in a game. We're like, is this? I'm like, I hate story. If it's got a story, maybe you'll love it, but I hate it.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. Like in terms of what we play, like me v Jack. Jack, if he doesn't care for the storyline, it's all about gameplay. Whereas
Yes.
I'm like, I am story focused. If you give me a game with a story, I'm hooked and I love it. Gameplay can come second, and I'll forgive a lot of stuff. Whereas Jack's like, I hate this.
I can never play any of like a Telltale game because I'm like, it's just pressing buttons.
Yeah.
I don't care about these people.
And I've never really understood the theory behind those Telltale games, and I don't know why people would pay money to play them.
Love them though.
Yeah, I've never actually played a Telltale game I've liked.
No.
And I've started a few.
I can't get into them. But I also don't like point and click adventure games. I don't like just any of that stuff. I just can't. I just don't have the time.
Yeah, mostly like impatient games. Like
Yeah.
if you like, I think any sort of turn-based game, not for you. Whereas they're my jam a bit.
I have not finished a Pokemon game since Red and Blue because I get to the Elite Four and I'm like, now I have to grind. I don't actually care, and then I stop playing.
It's,
I can just dump my Pokemon in the bin at the Elite Four. Just put my Pokeballs in the trash. And
I'm
go
done,
and
thank
live
you.
on a I don't need this. You want them? They're yours.
Well,
I'm going to be a fisherman.
talking about Pokemon though, have you got onto the Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee games?
I've started playing it a little bit. Again, I've never really played a Pokemon game, so this is like my very first Pokemon game that I've
I
played.
can't fathom that.
Enjoying it so
It's
much.
been around for 20 years.
Yeah, I guess I never had a Game Boy. I think I had one of them on the 3DS that I maybe played for like a night. But and I'm like, who are these? These aren't the like 150 Pokemon that I knew from the cartoon growing up.
Yes.
I don't want to learn these new things.
I'm
old
very
and
much the
set
same.
my
It's
ways.
OG Pokemon or nothing.
For a man
Exactly.
who has never finished a single Pokemon game, I've always kept up to date with them. And I think the last one I played was Diamond and Pearl, I think. So,
Yeah, right.
but I can't finish them. And then when Sun and Moon came out, the most recent one, like the most recent new handheld one, I was like, nope, I don't need this. But I still looked them up because for some reason I want to know what the new Pokemon are.
Yeah.
You know,
I got told today that there's Pokemon based off ice cream.
there sure are.
That's ridiculous.
Is
There
it
were
more
Pokemon
ridiculous
based
than
off
an electric
magnets
rat?
in the first one. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not going to go eat a magnet or a rat.
Yeah.
Oh, I might.
Well, depends
True,
how hungry.
fair.
I've put worse in my mouth.
Yeah.
It's fine.
This week, we were thinking, hey, you know what? There just isn't enough comic book TV shows out there at the moment. Sure, we have 6 different live-action DC hero shows, 6 Netflix Marvel originals, 4 Marvel-produced shows, and 3 Fox to watch, plus everything they'll be getting released on DC's streaming service. But we want at least 5 more.
Hells yeah. See, the problem with a lot of those ones is the majority are dog shit.
Yeah.
Especially the Netflix ones.
A lot of them are bad.
Some are good. Was it the Legacy one? Good, but have I seen this past the first season? No.
I'd really like to watch Cloak and Dagger. I think it looks great. Have I watched it? No. Just not happening.
What's that? Daredevil season 1 was pretty good. Season 2 I liked half. Hey, here's season 3. No.
Yeah.
Have you watched any of season 3 of Daredevil?
No, first 2 minutes.
First 2
Then
minutes?
it was just like the opening sequence was like, last time we saw Daredevil, he was getting blown up in a building. And I was like, I don't remember this at all.
That sounds fake. Goodbye.
Not for me.
So are you watching any like comic book TV shows at the moment, like Walking Dead, anything like that?
I don't
No,
think so.
no. I think Walking Dead was not the first TV series that let me realize I could walk away. That was Dexter. But Walking Dead definitely cemented in my own sort of life that you can give up on a TV show and it's perfectly fine.
Oh,
and
wow.
it was for me when Carl was on top of a building or house just eating pudding or custard from a tub. And I was like, cool, this ain't for me anymore. You enjoy.
I think it was.
Goodbye.
I forget what it was, but there was some episode of The Walking Dead, maybe season 5. I got no idea. And I was watching it with my family, and they were all like, and I was laughing because I was like, "This is really funny." And then I turned around and was like, "Okay, I don't have to watch this TV. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
See ya."
So not really watching any sort of comic book TV series at the
I'm
moment.
reading a lot of comics, but I'm not watching a lot of TV shows based on comics.
The last one that I've watched is Legion, and I really enjoyed season 1, but I have yet to watch season 2.
Might be Legion for me too.
You know what? I'm pretty much the same because I love Legion season 1, but I watched Legion season 2, episode 1.
Not good.
Really?
I think that's my walking away point. Not that it was bad. It's just it never really hooked me.
Yeah,
right.
fair.
And isn't there like something called Gifted? Apparently that's a newie.
There's like a Marvel TV show that's in season 2 that I only heard about when they were like, season 2's on its way. I was like, what was season 1? Huh? What? That might be the one with Maisie Williams in it? Cast Runaways? Did Runaways come out?
Yes, Runaways was amazing. So
Really?
it was so good. It's it's different from everything else that's out there. So we actually recently did an episode of top 5 TV shows of 2018.
Yeah, sure.
And that was my number 5 out of everything. So yeah, it was quite good. I recommend jumping on board.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Plus, it has a dinosaur in it. You know, you're always going to win when you have a dinosaur.
Do like dinosaurs. But yes, I feel with our expertise of not really watching them, I think we should throw some in the mix.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you know what? I don't think it could really be anything worse than what the CW is putting out at the moment.
Yeah, look. Bring back Smallville. That's all I can say. Smallville ruled. Like
Smallville was amazing.
That might be my favorite comic book TV show ever. It's got a great Superman because he's just a bloody weirdo. And you got a great Lex Luthor. Plus a great Lex Luthor's dad. Plus, the Kents don't want Superman to have sex, and it's great. They're like, you will kill a woman if you do. Don't do it.
Yeah,
Superman's
could you imagine
but
that, though?
I'm horny. It's great.
All right. Well, I reckon we get into our first comic book, and this one is from you, Joel. Animosity.
Animosity. Yeah, it's something from me and Jack, really, because it's a comic we both found relatively. I forget who recommended it.
I don't remember who found it
because we're like,
first.
this is amazing. This is amazing. We sort of just bantered it with each other about like how great it is. It's an amazing concept of a comic book, and I think it'd be an amazing concept. Either a live action would be hard.
Live action would be hard, but I think kind of doable, but animated is weird as well. Yeah. Animated also feels wrong.
So the premise...
I'm trying to find the writer of it, sorry.
...is Margaret.
Yeah, I would like
Margaret Bennett wrote that one.
That's the one, yeah. Incredible.
So the premise is that one day animals gain like sentience and sapience.
Yeah.
I always forget the difference.
They're basically all...
cognizant.
They are all alive and on an equal level of intelligence as human beings, and they all have the ability to speak and communicate with human beings. I don't know if they ever address if you wake up, which is what they all call it, in like another country, if you learn that language, because it's all in America from what we've seen so far. They all know English, but I don't know if there are any that know any other languages. But yes, so
does the goat know Spanish?
Yes, he does. So I guess wherever you wake up is the language you know.
Yeah, which is kind of weird because anyway.
Yeah.
Let's not get bogged down and like, hey, something neat about this world. But it's amazing. Like the opening sequence, or the opening panels, is just like a bunch of different animals just waking up, and it's just through all of them being like, "Oh my god!"
As every animal is like, "Oh, what has happened to me?"
And then just 2 sloths are like, "Fuck."
And then there's a great scene where it's like the human president and the animal president are meeting to try to come to some kind of accord, and it shows these humans in the bushes with a gun trained on the animal president, and then it shows this moose with a gun resting on its head and 2 squirrels on it, aiming at the human president. They both get killed, and basically the world falls into chaos. And the comic follows this young girl of about 13 and her dog, who's a bloodhound. Bloodhound?
Yeah, bloodhound called Sandor.
Yeah. And it's kind of like if you've ever played The Last of Us, it's got that kind of tone.
Yeah.
In that it's sort of about fatherhood and it's about relationships. It just happens to be taking place in a world where every animal is all of a sudden alive.
Yeah, and this is really, really incredible, and I absolutely adore the series, and I think it'd be a very... Especially if they played it straight.
Yeah, because it sounds like it's going to be cartoonish, but it's always it's never played for laughs other than in a way where just naturally a comedic situation would occur because animals are now alive.
Yeah, like there's one scene where it's just like all the dolphins just are attacking the shore and they're screaming like, "Give us your women, give us your human women," and it's just. I think that'd be very because if the tone is especially kept to what it is, which is that you're right, if they play it straight, I think it'd be an amazing TV series.
It's somehow incredibly hilarious, incredibly intelligent in its writing, but it's also really heartwarming and really emotional in places.
Poignant, I'd say.
Oh, so poignant.
And there's some beautiful philosophical moments. There's this one I can own another open of one of the comics. It's just two krill talking.
Yeah,
as they didn't get ate by a
the
whale.
krill, and they're like, if we are alive, how small does it get? Are microbes alive now? How low?
How far down the food chain does it get? Because we are but the lowliest of low.
Yeah.
And it's just really, really, really fascinating.
Yeah, right.
That'd be a really
that
cool
sounds
kind
like
of show.
Absolutely. That sounds amazing. I mean, and it's one of those things of you always want to know what your dog's thinking. You always want to be able to have your dog talk to you. And then you have this realization that your dog's seen you do things that probably no one should ever hear about.
Yeah.
So...
Well, there's a really great scene kind of later in the comic where Sandor, who has been the family dog and who's been looking after the little girl, comes across the family cat. And they just have this moment where they're like, well, that's our family. But they've got opposing ideas about how they look after it and how the relationship was when they were together. And you're like, man, what a cool, unique moment that you kind of wouldn't get in any other situation where they're like, we loved them. As their pets, we loved them. Yeah,
because there's this really great thing, when all the animals are awakening, and it goes to sort of almost like a montage around the world, and there's one with this cat that just creeps up onto some guys, this guy sleeping, puts her paw on his face, and is like, if you ever touch her again, I will kill you.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And it's just really cool shit that just kind of just happens. And there's a sister comic which sort of follows
It's a wolf winter Malamute hybrid, I think.
Yeah. Cool.
Who's kind of decided that
Wintermute
is the name of the thing, but she's a combination of a wolf and a dog, and she's running this city, which is just called the City by the Sea. They never give it a location. And it's basically so the animosity of the comic is sort of about relationships and about people trying to survive this very rough, very strange new world. But animosity evolution is let's try and build a society together. But it's quite rough. So Wintermute, who's running the thing, is well, any crime is punishable by death because we need meat to feed the predators, because otherwise the predators will die. But obviously we can't just kill people, because then what are we? So we have to find a way to feed them. And there's a really great line in a later issue where, because she's also put in all these really strict food restrictions and stuff, and the human character in that, who's a vet, is he's like, well, you shouldn't be doing this, and she's like, I have literally no option. I can't decide one animal is lesser. I'm not doing that. I can't let everybody eat each other. I'm not doing that. The best way I can do is what I'm doing right now. And there's all this political intrigue, and all of the dolphins have a city under the sea that we've yet to interact with. And also maybe the wolf and the man are in love, and that's what is going on there. Let's explore that.
Okay.
Because they're all alive now. I've just been waiting the whole time for them to get to the fucking... at a certain point, we're going to have to address the fact that now a human and a cow could fall in love and have sex.
Yeah,
and
that's
just normal now.
Huge dynamic to add into the mix, isn't it?
They've yet to touch on it, but
there's
it's bloody common. I'll tell you
hints.
what. There's definitely hints. There's a very good scene where the vet and Wintermute have this discussion where they basically are we love each other, but we just don't know what the goal is here. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So
I think it'd be I like the idea of an animated series akin to Animals of Farthing Wood.
Oh yeah,
sort of thing where it's a little bit more serious, but the animation is quite nice. Because I think if you follow the path of is Allie the young girl?
Yeah, I think her name's Allie.
Yeah, Allie and Sandor as the sort of main storyline. Then you got a nice little spin-off show with animosity evolution.
Yeah, well, it's a kind of thing where you would want it to have that again, it is a serious comic. So you would 8 points. I thought it was only 6 out of 10 on Comic Book Roundup. No, 8.6. Sorry, I'm just looking up the name of the girl.
Yeah, it's Ellie, isn't it?
I don't know, because Ellie is from The Last of Us, so maybe not. We don't know.
Well researched, the boys.
We'll never know. But you
Now-
wanted to keep that. Sorry, I was just going to say if you wanted to work animosity evolution in there, that's very easily an arc for Sandor and
Oh, yeah,
little
true.
girl
It's
to
like
kind
And
of-
come
that's
across
the
that city.
spin-off version, spin-off comic of that series now, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
are both those series still going, or is it like a complete set from, say, like 1 to 60, something like that?
no, they're both still going. Animosity, the main one, is on like maybe its 4th big arc, I think, and Animosity Evolution's on its 2nd.
Second or third.
Yeah.
Damn, I might have to check that comic out. It sounds amazing. And
Yeah.
I like comics that are a little bit different as well, because I mean it's super easy to get lost into the Flashes and the Batmans of the world, but things like this are a little bit left field. They add a lot of dynamic to, I guess, a comic reading arsenal.
Yeah, and I think it's like always a kind of, it's an interesting thought experiment as well. It's like, what would happen if suddenly every single animal just gained sentience and cognizance and all that kind of jazz? Because like it doesn't take it in a completely and utterly comical way is what you might expect. It is a very serious moment that these things happen that are quite comical.
Yeah.
Like this thing when it first starts happening, because no one knows what to do, because of course eating meat now is like, it's a bit taboo.
Yeah.
So what do we do here? And of course then you have like animals which are like, we are nothing but carnivores, so shit.
Yeah.
What do we do now? Because now that we know murder is a thing, and there's just like, of course, all the animals have like a different personality. There's one where all the gerbils, like the hamsters, get awoken, and all the little kid gerbils are like, "She's a monster, run!" And the mother's like, "I'm gonna eat you." And it's just like, "Oh yeah, that's cool." Then there's some of the stuff where it's like, "Hey, I'm a cow and I need help to be like, I need to be milked. So if you can milk me, we'll split the profits." And there's other like animals which are like, "Hey, you know, let's deal with existence the human way. Let's take some Prozac." And other people, like I think it was like rat selling rat kill to be like, fuck this. We don't want this at all.
This. There's a great conversation. One of my favorite moments in the book is Wintermute and the vet, and they're looking at this cloud of mayflies, and he's like, man, like, you know, and the mayflies are talking about how in their mythology, the wake is something that, you know, they kind of talk about it like it's ancient history. And he's like, but it's only been like 3 years or whatever. And Wintermute's like, yeah, but a mayfly's life is a day. So think about the amount of generations that have happened in 3 years. To them, the wake is ancient history. But those living beings exist now for a day. And it's just a really good conversation where you're like, what do we do with all of this?
Very fascinating. A big fan.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm surprised I haven't done anything with that one as of yet.
I think there's talks or somebody's bought the rights to it.
Yeah, okay.
But there's no talk of like kind of anybody doing anything with it specifically.
Yeah, anything going into production yet. Yeah.
But somebody definitely has the rights to make it into a TV show, which hopefully they eventually do.
Oh, fingers crossed for that one. All right, well, let's move on. Let's move on to a comic that I think should be turned into a animated TV show.
Sure.
Now, this one should really come as no surprise to any listeners of the show because it is Injustice, I guess you would call it 1.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who don't know what Injustice is, basically the series takes place in an alternative reality where Superman descends into basically a mad titan of the world after the Joker essentially tricks him into killing his wife and unborn child by poisoning him with kryptonite and Joker gas.
Okay.
And he essentially kills Lois and his unborn child up into space.
I think I know a little bit about Injustice, but I've never read the comic. I always mean to. But
I know about it like through just pop culture osmosis, but I have never read a single comic.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to think like Superman can be one of those boring characters because, you know, he's stronger than everyone. He always wins. It's but this is like a really interesting take on the character because, you know, he's essentially he's gone to the other side. He's not evil, but he's not doing the right thing. So it's basically a battle between Batman and Superman and a whole bunch of other heroes on whose side are you on. Are you on Batman's side or are you on Superman's side? And
100% Superman. You can kill me.
Yeah.
well, yeah, and that's the interesting part of the story is a lot of the I guess people who are on Superman's side are doing it because they're scared for their lives because no one's really able to stop him. But I mean, Batman being Batman, you know, he always seems to find a way. Also known as the plot holes. Yeah, so basically he's able to get his hands on like these little green pills that seem to give everyone an equal advantage. So everyone's on the same playing level. So it's interesting because we did get a whole spin-off series of just Harley Quinn, who seems to have a pocket of these pills and is able to go around and go hand to hand with Lobo and characters like that.
Yeah, right.
Which is, it would never really ever happen, but
is it would you turn it into like one of those DC animated movies, or would you have it as like a long-running TV show? What do you think would suit it better?
There's so much to this comic because there's actually 148 issues of it because it gets released weekly. And I guess Injustice 1 is complete now, but Injustice 2 is continuing on this story. And what's great about it, it's actually done by an Aussie writer here in Australia, Tom Taylor.
Cool.
Yeah, and he basically just smashes these comics out week to week, and they are always quality. They're nice and short. So you can kind of go on a massive binge of, say, 20 comics in, a handful of hours and really get some decent story building happening.
Yeah, right. Cool. Yeah.
See, I was disappointed that the current DC... what are they calling the movies these times? I don't know.
Who knows?
Oh, the worlds movies. Of DC.
Yeah.
It's almost like, were they hinting at like Superman going evil?
It felt like what I thought. So you remember in Batman v Superman when the Flash comes in and is like, Martha is the key.
Lois is the key.
Lois
mate.
is the key. Sorry. Oh my god.
Pay attention.
I was like, is that a reference to Injustice? Is Injustice gonna happen? But then, obviously, it did not. But that's what I kind of thought. And I was like, how great if they went and they did the whole Injustice storyline in the films, and then they introduced through some multiverse bullshittery, hey, here's the real Justice League.
Oh, yeah.
And they're not whatever the hell these characters are.
Standing ovation. I would have thrown so much money at that screen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a real shame they didn't do it because, I mean, they always have the possibility to, throw Flashpoint out there to make anything reset.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, they could, but will they?
No.
Who
knows? Cowards.
I just can't see DC doing that. Yeah.
But no, it sounds like a really cool animated series. I don't know, could you get away with doing a live action?
I think live action would be far too difficult just because, I mean, you literally have nearly everyone in the DCEU divided in two. And, To get those powers to actually look half decent on the screen without it looking like a CW program.
You do have a lot of characters in the DC comics that have powers, you're right, that just are like you got, what's that Captain Atom guy who is a nuke? It's just stuff that is not going to look good if you just try to put
exactly. I mean,
that's a fair point.
DC Legends of Tomorrow have a guy in there called Captain Steel or something like that, and he kind of looks a little bit ridiculous how the Atom kind of would. He's just made of pure steel, but they can only show him for about 2 seconds because it must cost them tens of thousands of dollars to do it.
It's like, do you see Bane? How Bane's going to look in the new Gotham?
Oh
my god!
Big fan. Nah, let's see just how awful we can go.
I got no love for Bane as a character, really. He's sort of boring. But that costume's just so ridiculous. Yeah, look.
Nah, A+ for effort. Do something new with it. What is it? Who knows?
What is happening? Who knows? Who can tell?
All right. Well, I reckon let's move on to another one. Let's go to one that was a late throw-in by Jackson here. Man-Thing.
So, Man-Thing is my favorite Marvel Comics character. Do you know much about Man-Thing?
No. What I know of him is that he kind of looks like Swamp Thing.
Yes, he does look like Swamp Thing, but whereas Swamp Thing is a erudite, intelligent guardian of the green, the force of plants in the DC Comics, Man-Thing's just a shambling piece of swamp. So Man-Thing's origin story is that he was Ted Sallis, a brilliant scientist working on a super soldier serum, presumably the same one they make Captain America.
It is, yeah.
Anyway, he's about to sell it to AIM, but then his wife betrays him. Ellen Brandt is her name. She betrays him, and he's like, oh, crap. I've been betrayed. I can't let them get their hands on the super soldier serum, so he injects himself in the arm with the serum and crashes his car into the swamp. The swamp just happened to be, it's the Florida Everglades, just happened to be the nexus of all realities, so a very magical area. That mixes with the super soldier serum and turns him into a giant shambling piece of swamp. He also is not intelligent at all. He is not conscious, but he reacts to people's feelings.
Yes.
And if you fear him, he burns your face.
Yeah. He can just taste, like, is he taste or just senses emotions?
Whatever knows fear burns at the man-thing's touch.
So if you're afraid, like, touch them and they burn.
Yeah, and if you're sad,
teleport.
Man-thing gets sad, huh?
He can also teleport.
Yes, he can do anything, basically. Man-thing is...
a god.
Yeah, well, he's very powerful, and he never dies. Sometimes they're like, we'll dry him out, that'll get him, but then he just gets a bit wet and he's fine. Or they're like, we'll kill him, that'll get him, but then he just turns up in the swamp again. Yeah. But I always thought Man-Thing could make a really good Netflix series if you made it like a Southern Gothic, quite dark, kind of like shades of Lovecraft, kind of, but not leaning into that too much. And instead of making Man-Thing your protagonist, you make Richard Rory your protagonist. So Richard Rory is Man-Thing's friend?
DJ in the same city.
Yeah, he's like a radio host, and
okay,
he's sad all the time, and incredibly unlucky. Those are his two character traits. Citrusville is the town that they all live in.
That's exactly what you want to hear on the radio as well, a really sad DJ.
Yeah, he's not good, and he's eternally unlucky. There's like one where an issue where he helps out some guys with like he fixes their van and assuming he'll get a lift, and then they just drive off and leave him in the swamp, and he's like, well, this is pretty much par for the course. But there's just a lot of interesting elements that I think could work really well in a Man-Thing TV show. So Man-Thing's nemesis, if you could call him that, is a demon known as Thog the Demon Spawn, who's always trying to rip into this reality. There's also a wizard called Dakim the Enchanter. There's a woman who is a reincarnated Atlantean priestess who is just kind of like a hillbilly girl named Jennifer Kale. And I think if I was making a TV show, like a Man-Thing TV show, I would just try to focus on these characters and have Man-Thing as sort of like a like a force more than a character.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what he functions as. The best Man-Thing comics, someone was saying this, one of the few people who care about Man-Thing was saying this. They were like, Man-Thing really works if you put him in to just boost the emotion of a scene. He's not a character in and of himself, but he's a good catalyst for characters, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I think that's the kind of show I'd try to make with it. Focus on Richard Rory as your protagonist. Have him befriend Man-Thing. I don't really remember how it happens in the comics. I assume they just...
I think it's just there being all sad.
And then he meets Man-Thing, and because he's sad,
like,
Man-Thing gets sad. And he's like, oh. And then they sit down and chat. Well, the Man-Thing probably doesn't make that noise. He probably goes, boo, because that's the noise he tends to make. One of the Man-Thing villains that's in a couple of issues is a guy called the Fool Killer, who's like a serial killer who kills people
fools.
He thinks are fools because his youth pastor, who he has frozen, is in a van, and he believes he's telling him to kill fools. He's not. He's just a frozen youth pastor. But I think a season that focused on that serial killer and Rory Richards trying to figure out, who he is and that kind of thing.
Yeah, because I think it'd work really well if you kind of have this kind of like gothic horror-esque type thing, and there's murders happening in the town, and of course you just change the name because Fool Killer is stupid.
Yeah, absolutely.
To something else, and you just kind of have this serial killer going around, and the police are incompetent, as it were, and maybe you get Rory Richards, sort of who's the DJ or like a disc jockey. You make him sort of sad, but you kind of elevate his status in the community a bit, so he's people like warning. And maybe even the serial killer is using his show to get like clues or
I like that, yeah.
Or even what's that classic? There's like a book that I think was made into a movie called The Night Caller, and it's about a guy who had a show like Rory Richards, like a talkback show, and a serial killer starts calling in and being like, "This is who I'm going to kill next," and they're like,
Yeah,
oh my
right.
god, we got to trace it.
So yeah, something like even that. So you kind of have Roy Richards playing a part, and like almost like an investigative journalist, as it were, to kind of like investigating, but also kind of like talking about it and kind of getting the public scared. But he wants listeners, and they even have that kind of thing to be like, I want to stop the serial killer, but ratings are real high. So it's like, I'm a piece of shit, but and yeah, having like Man-Thing in the background,
And then also in the background, you sort of give these hints to, so like Jennifer Kale, Dakim the Enchanter, and Thog the Demon Spawn, all pretty silly. But if you make it like Dakim the Enchanter is just like somebody's old grandpa who's accessed some dark knowledge in the background, who's like, we've got to summon him, we're trying to summon him. You just hints to that, then your second season is, oh crap, they're trying to summon Thog the Demon Spawn. That's no good. You kind of elevate that gothic horror, make it a little bit Lovecrafty. And then also in the background, I would want Ellen Brandt, the wife of Ted Sallis, who Man-Thing, when he becomes Man-Thing, she's like, oh my god, where's Ted? And he burns her face, and she has like a handprint scar on her head. You kind of have hints to that in the background as well. That could be your third season where
AIM come back wanting this,
exactly. They're like, we want the serum. Ellen Brandt has this like, I betrayed my husband, look what happened to him. But also he burnt me. Why did I do that? What does it take to make me do that? I think there's definitely something there. And also, if you follow the Marvel cinematic universe, all of this has been happening in the background based on clues that I've seen in the movies.
Well, we did get one kind of like his head in Thor Ragnarok.
There have been, I think, 4 different references to Man-Thing.
Oh, really?
In the Marvel cinematic. In Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., someone is talking about the various people or beings that they've got a catalog, and one of the characters is like, what the heck's a Man-Thing? So Man-Thing exists. In Iron Man 3, Ellen Brandt is one of the people who has the Extremis serum given to her, and she has a massive scar on her face. So clearly Man-Thing has existed at this point. Howard the Duck exists. Howard the Duck only exists because Dakim the Enchanter took Man-Thing on a magic journey to heaven. Because comics are insane. And in doing so, accidentally summoned Howard the Duck from the Duck universe. And also Man-Thing's face has been on... is on the whatever his name is, the Game Master. What's it? What, is that his name?
Yeah,
sure. His face is in Thor Ragnarok on the big tower, and Man-Thing has been known to go to space. So
that is true.
Anything's possible.
It's happened. It's happened in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but they're just cowards who won't show it on the screen. Man-Thing movie 2020.
Yeah, I love the idea of, because with this sort of series, you kind of take the best bits of True Detective and True Blood.
Yeah,
True Detective and True Blood, and you kind of have this wonderfully sort of American gothic horror.
Yeah,
I really like that horror element about the whole thing there.
Absolutely.
Because again, with Man-Thing, like, a lot of people are afraid, and if you've ever seen the film of Man-Thing, it is dog shit. But like, you don't have to show Man-Thing.
No.
You can do a lot of stuff where it's just kind of, a lot of stuff is implied.
Your story is really about the town of Citrusville and about a serial killer or an eldritch being or somebody seeking revenge, whatever. Man-Thing is just there in sort of the background, which... The beautiful thing I was thinking about doing a Man-Thing TV show is that you can change the canon however you like, because I think I might be the only person who knows it, so no one's going to care, and I might also be the only person who cares about Man-Thing, so you can kind of do what you want.
Yeah, no one cares about Man-Thing, including a lot of the writers who have written for
Man-Thing.
Man-Thing.
There is several issues of... It was like a running thing at Marvel Studios where no one wanted the Man-Thing gig because they hated writing him.
Oh.
But he's my favorite character.
He's a beautiful, beautiful... beautiful beast.
Yeah,
well,
so
I'm
definitely...
I'm sold on that TV show.
That's good to hear.
3 seasons. 3 seasons, I'm in.
Yeah, that's it. 3 seasons is all we need, then chuck it out or whatever.
Well, look, I'm going to match your Man-Thing 3 seasons with a TV show that I want 3 seasons of, and that's Irredeemable. So,
classic.
Fuck, yes.
Great
Irredeemable.
comic.
Oh, you guys know this one?
Big fan.
Big fan.
Oh, fantastic. This is going to be a good one to talk about then. So, written by Mark Waid and a short run of 37 issues. So, give me 12 episodes
Sure.
each season.
Nice.
And make it high quality. Make it Netflix old school Daredevil quality. This is what I want.
Yeah.
So basically, for those playing at home, the series follows the fall of the world's greatest superhero, the Plutonian, as he begins to slaughter the population of Earth.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite openings in any sort of comic ever, where it's sort of everything's a stand-in for someone else. But I love that in this, the first thing he does is kind of kill the Batman character straight off the bat, and you're like, yeah, all right, I'm sold.
I'm in. Cool.
What I love about Irredeemable, it's kind of everything that I want in my bad Superman.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, yeah.
Because I feel like Superman is too much of a great character to have him as a good guy all the time. And I guess that's kind of why I lean so much towards Injustice, because, this shows a different version of what our Superman can be. But Irredeemable really just takes it to 11 and takes him to this absolutely next level of, I guess, power settings. Not that I really want to spoil too much of it, because it really does get quite cosmic in the sense of how he comes around. So
I think it's just very nice. What I really like about Irredeemable is that it's not like DC Comics have this real big problem with every single issue like that the Justice League faces is always like this it's always end of the world.
Yeah.
But like Superman going crazy, it is end of the world. Like you wouldn't think it's end of the world, but it is. There's nothing. What am I trying to say here? It's not like there's an easy solution. It's like, oh, he's gone nuts, and that is literally worst case scenario. This isn't like, I don't know, like another lesser character went nuts. This is an apocalypse situation.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And it's really nice that you see like some of the minor characters in that universe, like what we would consider like the B or the C list, stepping up to the plate because the A list are dead.
Yeah.
And it's just like really fascinating with what the Plutonian does. And there's like, so because he's fully crazy. Like there's just no go. He's snapped.
Yeah.
Like he sinks the Philippines at one point. It's incredible what like he does to kind of I guess show how much he's snapped. And who was the main villain in that who kind of keeps jumping from like person to person?
Let me just see if I can find that.
I know who you mean. Did you ever read the companion comic Uncorruptible?
No, that's on my next read list, because we do get to see, I guess, the Plutonian's, I guess, minor nemesis in that.
Yeah,
and that's all about him, isn't it?
It's one. I think ultimately I prefer Uncorruptible to Irredeemable. It's a close thing, but I think I prefer it. It's basically like one of his villains, a guy called Max Damage, is like, well, if he's destroying the world, I don't want to live in a world where I don't want to live. I want to live in the world, so I guess I'm going to have to take up the mantle, and I'm going to have to be a good guy. And it's sort of, I don't know, it's almost like a really interesting reflection on what it means to be good, as this guy who beforehand was like a terrible villain is like, I just got to figure it out, and I'm bad at it. He sucks at being good.
Like the first thing he does is he leaves his girlfriend, who is underage and called jailbait.
Yeah, and he's like, yo, no, I'm sorry. I'm good now. I can't be with you anymore. And she's like, what the hell? And he's like, when you're off age, come back, but I can't do this. And everyone's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm good now. I'm good. It's an incredible... I don't want to spoil too much for you, but Uncorruptible is really, really good.
Yeah, that's on my read list, most definitely. Modius was the villain.
Modius, that's right.
Yeah. Again, I don't want to spoil it, because even though it's a very old comic as it is now, and unfortunately not many people have read it, but I just love that guy's Modius' motivation, and it's just like an interesting villain that, like, I guess spoilers, is in love with Plutonian.
Yeah,
it's something you've never seen before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just like, they're all crazy.
and I guess, like, if we're kind of talking spoilers here, I like how the Plutonian goes along and leads him on a bit to further his own motives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It would be a very, very unique... Like, if they could pull it off in like a 3-season thing, it would be very interesting, very unique, especially towards the later half of this, like the TV series, with all the cosmic kind of stuff that ends up happening.
Yeah,
and like how you'd see that displayed in a TV show would be very interesting.
Yeah,
and I think because the reason why Irredeemable works and Uncorruptible works so well in the comic book universe is that we've had years and years and decades of the superhero story. And like Mark Waid, the writer, is just like, he's not known for that kind of story. He's known for this very stereotypical sort of superhero story. So having him write it was kind of like, he understands that he can deconstruct and really break this down. And it really works because we've had, years of those stories that we can kind of deconstruct them. And I think by now we've had enough
superhero movies and superhero media,
TV series, superhero media, that we could have something like this, that even though we're not using Superman and Batman and all that kind of stuff, the audience will clue in.
And I think you're right, because of that, like, a little bit oversaturation of the superhero genre, like, it's kind of almost the perfect time for something like that, which deconstructs, because you're right, it's such a deconstruction of that kind of story that you're right, the world's ready for an irredeemable TV show. I'd be interested to see how it would look as a TV show, because it's quite spectacular visually in a lot of places. But I think a movie would be weird as well. Yeah. Like I guess a TV show is the best place for it.
More time to breathe.
Yeah, you kind of need that breathing room for something like Irredeemable.
And there's kind of 3 good arcs throughout that whole story as well. I mean, we got his destruction of Earth. We got him being sent away to, I guess, the other planet where he becomes a prisoner.
Yeah.
And kind of we get like a little bit of a World War Hulk kind of vibe, where he comes back almost with a superhero army.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, like, they are kind of taken care of quite quickly by, I think it's Cubit, the genius on Earth, who, that would be an amazing character just in itself, a guy who could kind of build teleport machines from a wristwatch and so on and so on. And then, we kind of get that final arc where it gets quite cosmic, and the way the comic ends is one of the best endings I've ever seen. It kind of just pays homage to everything without spoiling too much.
I think, it'd be great. And then, obviously after you do that, you can go back and tell the story of Uncorruptible as well. Like, you've got kind of almost 3 seasons of both. Although Uncorruptible doesn't really have that 3... It's a bit of a shorter comic from memory. But still, you could do it.
It's a spin-off series. It can happen.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So let's move on to the final comic. Now, this is one that... This is probably one of the most interesting ones on the list, because it's something that I couldn't imagine working. So I need you guys to sell this one to me, because I read the synopsis of it, and while it seems quite interesting in, I guess, a political landscape, to sell it as a TV show would be quite interesting. So the comic is Pride of Baghdad, and this is recommended by both of you, isn't it?
I think mostly myself, but you've read it as well.
Yeah, I think I've skimmed it.
Yeah, so it's mostly me, to be honest. So it's Brian K. Vaughan wrote it, and Nico Henriken, I think. I'm not sure how to pronounce that last name, is the artist. And it is a very fascinating look at the, I guess, the invasion of Baghdad by the US-led coalition. And it's sort of set in 2003. During that sort of invasion, and it follows a pride of lions who have escaped from the zoo, and it's just a very fascinating look at a group of lions, and like particularly like that, I guess the lead lion kind of finding out who he is and his role in the world, as it were. And it's all based on a true story as well, which is just ridiculous.
Wow. That's the most insane part of it.
So while Baghdad was bombed, like the Baghdad Zoo got bombed and a lot of animals escaped. And I do not want, because if no one has read this, the last few pages are incredible, because he's just like, oh, I see. My heart. And maybe a lot of people have seen like a particular image of this, and it is like of a giraffe going, the sky is falling, the sky is falling, and then the giraffe's head just explodes. That's from this comic.
Oh, okay.
So this would not really work as a live action. This would work perfectly as an animated short film. Or just an animated film.
You could do it as a mini-series.
Yeah, definitely a mini-series. Yeah. Like a short miniseries animated would be amazing. Like the artwork in this is stunning. Like it's all there in terms of like art direction, art style. And yeah, it just follows the 4 lions. It's like sort of the male lion who's like the leader of the pride. his cub, I guess, for lack of a better word, lion wife.
Sure,
and the old matriarch. And it's sort of as they escape the zoo and they sort of are going through Baghdad, which is getting the shit bombed out of it, and they come across like again, it's a nice like there is a sort of like political analogies with it all, and like they meet this really old turtle. This turtle's just kind of like, I've been around for 100 years. I've seen this shit before. Whatever. It comes in circles and cycles. He fucks off. And there's like a really interesting fight that ends up happening with like a captive bear that ends up being like out of its captivity. And it's like this big black bear fighting this lion. Very cool kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So just in terms of visually, I think would look amazing to see this. And it does pack quite a gut punch. Straight and like a lot of heart in this film.
Right in the feels, hey?
And also politically, I feel like it's because you're kind of doing it through the lens of like a Pride of Lions. It's almost like you'll get it all across, get your message across. It sort of softens the blow a little bit.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like you're kind of showing the sort of the horrors of what happened and what went down, but in a way that like it's a good way to show that kind of thing because people will be interested in seeing. Because like visually, it's so interesting. I don't know. I'm just imagining. You see here's a TV show or a miniseries about like the horrors of the bombing of Baghdad or whatever, and you're like, oh, that looks really heavy. But I'm sure it has some great points and great message or whatever. But then you see Pride of Baghdad, and you're like, that looks really some lion. What's this about?
Yeah, it sort of softens that blow and gets people kind of interested.
Yeah.
For some reason, we care like, whatever. A bunch of people are dying, but one dog dies, and I'm in tears. It's just this weird thing that we can sometimes do. So I think it'd be a very interesting, short miniseries. I like how we've all gone like, animated. I think is the way to go.
Yeah. No, but, I could see Pride of Baghdad being live. The only reason I couldn't see Pride of Baghdad being live action is that I just feel like. It's very visceral, and a live action TV show where they blow up a giraffe's head is maybe gonna float less than I think it'd be great live action, but I think it'd be a harder sell. Yeah,
even like it's just gonna be a hard sell anyway, because there's a lot of like animal death, like a giraffe's head being exploded. So. Again, and with things that are being animated, everyone automatically assumes, for children.
Yeah.
But you'd have to be like, no, this is a hard R.
Yeah, absolutely.
Type, animated miniseries. And it'd be nice that, to have like Brian K. Vaughan having like a very, successful thing that's been on television. I think that would be nice.
Yeah. Now, with this, is there any interaction, say, with the humans or any soldiers or any, I guess...
Do you want me to spoil things? Because there is.
Well, how spoilerish is it?
It's pretty spoilery. Like it's very spoilery.
All right. Maybe we leave it out, but because I think I have a feeling what might happen towards the end then.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we chose a lot of things where animals talk. That's good.
Humans are boring when we talk. Get an animal to talk.
Yeah. Well, I think if you were doing this and you wanted to expand on it a bit more, you could include definitely a lot more of what's happening in that sort of at that time. So you could include a bit more of, say, human characters, be they, like the US soldiers or people who
do you think
are being also affected. But I like that it doesn't really follow a lot of the human characters, or like really the human character I don't really mentioned at all in the comic, because it kind of does kind of see like all the shit that we're doing is not just kind of like harmful to each other, but it does also affect some creatures and animals that we often don't really.
Do you think
about.
If it was expanded out, say instead of a miniseries, it was 3 seasons? Do you think you would lose a little bit of the?
100%. Yeah. I think it is like really like a 6-issue miniseries is more than enough to tell this story.
Yeah, for sure. Which is not a bad thing at all. But like that's good.
It's a story with a definite end. Like if this was like part 1 of an anthology as well. Yeah. If you were trying to do more things about that kind of era and the kind of effects that kind of had and kind of whatever like that, potentially you can kind of see more. But ultimately, it's like you want this as a sort of self-contained short story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Short miniseries as well.
With it going to, say, like an actual TV series here, would substituting the lines for, I guess, people and using it more metaphorically, would that kind of destroy the whole concept of it?
Yeah, I think, yes, 100%. You kind of really need the lions, and you kind of need it kind of being seen through their lens.
Yeah, for sure.
Because again, it kind of gets that weird thing where it's devoid, and it kind of adds that thing where they just don't know really what's going on. But for the first time in their lives, they're like, we're free.
Yeah.
Which is this.
I wonder if there's a word for that kind of thing where you are seeing something like that through the lens of something that doesn't understand it, but obviously because we know what it is, we do understand it. Because that has a specific emotional feel. Yeah. But I don't know what that... You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a baby seeing a car crash. You know? Whatever that feeling is, that's what Bride of Baghdad is.
I mean, I guess. But yeah, I think, if you adapted it so it was more like, human characters, you're like, well, and how does that work? Because it's like people trying to escape from that situation. I mean, I guess, and you kind of work it out, but
it would lose a lot.
And it's something that we've seen 100 times before as well.
This is at least an interesting take, and it might get more people watching it because people are like, I don't want to see another horrible war film, or I don't want to see another.
But this film with some lions in it, and it's only a miniseries. That'll give a watch. Oh, people are terrible.
Oh, that hurt again. So yeah,
this would really set the standard for all animated movies, TV shows with lions in it just being super sad.
Yeah, 100%. Look, if we can have Animals of Farthing Wood, Watership Down, why not Pride of Baghdad?
Yeah, absolutely. Pride of Baghdad.
It's all a shared universe.
Yeah. Look, if I had to watch two hedgehogs getting run over at the ripe old age of 6, I can cope with this.
Yeah, easy. Hell yeah, the Animals of Farthing Wood. What a great show.
Oh, no, so fucking good. I think it's all on YouTube.
Yeah, it is. Maybe I should rewatch it. I watched the first season. Maybe I'll get onto the second. Yeah. They toned down the murder. No, they didn't. They toned it up.
They toned it up, mate. They toned it up. What a series.
Yeah.
Maybe just a retelling of the Animals of Farthing Wood, to be honest. I think it's time for that to be revamped.
I agree.
Yeah, just new animated styles.
We're in the world of reboots, so why not?
Reboot Animals of Farthing Wood.
Yeah, look, again, same story, keep it as it is. I want to be the first opening image of Death of a fucking Toad, because holy shit, yes, please, more of that.
Grisly.
Just, update the animation, make it look a bit more schmick.
Nicer voice acting in places.
Nicer voice acting.
Done.
Yeah. Don't shy away or tone down those animal deaths and murders.
I'd like to see mice impaled by a bird, which happens.
The shriek?
Yeah, the cree, maybe? I forget. Shrike.
Fuck. What a good series.
Well, this turned into an endorsement for that.
Well, that's the show for this week, and if you enjoyed it, there are 3 things you can do to help support the show. Firstly, you can go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and review. 2, you can go to patreon.com/ComicConPod and sign up to become a Patreon to help support the show on a monthly basis from as little as $1 a month. And I should mention, that $1 a month will also get you 1 bonus episode of the podcast called Unplugged, which is not released to anyone else but our Patreon supporters. And thirdly, you can share the show around social media with your friends, and that would help us out a great deal. Be sure to join us for next week's show where we review Fantastic Beasts and the Crimes of Johnny Depp. But in the meantime, you can join in on the conversation on our social media outlets. On Facebook is probably the best place to get us, and that's Comic Confidential Podcast. We also have a listener community. Nearly 350 legends who all listen to the show and jump in there and talk about everything geeky. To join that group, simply search Comic Confidential Listener Community and answer one question. The question is, what is the name of the show? Super easy, but it keeps out all the robots. And we also have Instagram and Twitter. That's at ComicConPod for both of those. Now, we also have a website. That's ComicConPod.com. Past episodes, future episodes, and everything in between. But that's it. I'm done, guys. What a great episode. Very big thank you to the boys over at Sanspants for joining us. Thank you, Joel and Jackson. But for now, thanks for listening. I'm Cade, and this has been Comic Confidential, a pop culture podcast. Cheers. If you love this podcast, then head over to ComicConPod.com to check out the other incredible shows on our network.
Whether you love comedy, pop culture, or movie and TV reviews, CC Radio has got you covered.